Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And now you have done chapter one. Congratulations. That's, in this very quick pace quarter, you guys are doing such a good job, and I hope you guys know that. So we're starting chapter two now, which is really, 1.2. So the numbering's kind of weird, but we're starting chapter two. And now chapter one was we learned coding, we learned Python to draw using the turtle module. Now this chapter, we're going to actually be creating games. And with that comes one more skill that you're going to learn on that this lesson introduces you to. Now, first off, I want to introduce you to a new way you can write code in Trinket. It's a little bit stronger, and you can do this for everything. So if you were just to go to trinket.io, which is our environment that we've been using, and you were to click the home button and click new Trinket, and then we're actually going to use Pygame. And you could have done this for chapter one, but we're going to do it now because it's a stronger version. It uses Python 3, while this one is really using Python version 2. And then it also has an interactive environment, which will show, a graphical user interface, like a visual output. So click on that, and this is what we're going to create it in. Right? And you might have something here already. If it's your first time clicking it, just delete it, and you'll have an open ability. So let's write some things. So this lesson here, which is 1.2.1, is covering the start of chapter 2. I forget what it is, but I know that what you're doing is you are actually going to start creating a game, and the game you create in this lesson 1.2.1 is when it's basically a timed game to click an object as many times as you can, where the object, will move to a random spot after each time you click it. So that's pretty much what you're doing in this lesson here. Now, the skills that I want to go over in this lesson, and it's not all of them, but it's a good overview of what you'll be seeing and how they work. Yes, the curriculum does a good job if you just follow the steps, but maybe you just want to see me do it in a different context. Is you're going to learn in this one what a procedure, also known as a function, is. All right, so two different languages, procedure or function, depending on the language you're using. I think Python, they actually use the word function in Python. Procedure is more like Java and other languages, but I'm not sure on that one. We're going to learn the onclick method and how that works. And within functions and procedures, there's also going to be, what a parameter is. And those are the big things to go over in this one. So let's go over this. So first thing first is what's a procedure or a function? So a procedure or a function is when we use the word def in front of it. So I might define a function, and I'll call it as it will print your name. Let's do this. Define a function. And every time you create a function, typically, if you're not going to have any inputs, which what's in here right here, so if I actually put something here, what we do is that word where I called input is called a parameter. And you can have several parameters that are used in functions, but really they're just inputs. And when you call them, we call them arguments. And when you insert an input, you call it a argument. Okay. Now, let's say, I don't know what my input is. So I'm going to define a function print your name. And what's it going to do? It's going to print your name is, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to define print your name, and I want it to take your name as, and that's my parameter, or I'm going to define before your name is a variable. I'm going to define it as an input where it's going to ask, what is your name? So get your name as a variable, store it as a string, and that's my parameter here. So it's going to print your name is, put a space there, and then it's going to add your name. Now notice one thing, if I call this as is, or if I run this, notice that it asks, what's my name? So line 12, and I'll put Hind. And it's done. And you might think, hey, how come it never printed that? And the reason for that is with functions and parameters, let me get out of there really quick. With functions, also known as parameters, you need to call a function, again, or parameter, whatever, whatever language you want to use. Both are the same, interchangeable depending on the language. So what I mean by that is if I actually want it to print your name is, what I need to do is I need to actually call this function. What you do is you just write that function's name. So print your name and take your input, your name. And notice now if I call it, it should print that statement. So I run it. It's going to ask, what's my name? And I'll type in here, Hein. And it called the function, your name is Hein. Good. And notice, I created a function with a parameter. And down here, if I didn't actually include an argument here, if I didn't include one of those inputs, what's going to happen here is notice the error I get. So if I type Hein, the error I get is it says it's missing one required positional argument, right? There was a parameter I used. In order to call this function, it needs one parameter, it needs one input. So when I called this function, I didn't include that input, which here we call it an argument because we're actually inserting it. So it's missing one argument. And that's why I need to actually say it's going to take your name, right? And there you have it here. So that's a little bit of what a procedure of function is, right? Now, next part here is we talked about procedures functions. Now we're going to talk about the onclick method. So let me, we'll get rid of all this. So what does the onclick do? So onclick is, now that we're creating games, the onclick is the idea that if you want to click down on the mouse, something will happen, an event will happen. So in games, we use functions to help these things happen. We call it an event, if you say it so. So here we go, let's start it. So let's import the turtle module. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create, and I'm going to outline what we're going to do in this mini game. We're going to create an object after we imported it. And then what we want to do is we want to create an object, and then we want to create what's the word they're going to use in your lesson? Create the functions, basically. The functions, or the game events. And then you have to obviously call the events. And that more or less will create the code there. So let's see. So create an object. Let's do object. We'll just be creative and use the word object. And it'll be trtl.turtle. So create an object. And I actually want to have a shape. So let's do shape equals a circle. Okay. And then let's create a function and something for it to do. So let's define a function that we'll call move. We'll just call it move. Why not? Let's try to be creative, but let's call a function define move. Right. And then what I want to do is if I call this function, I want my object to go forward 100. I want my object to also turn right, say 95. Right? And from there, notice if I want to call the event, I would do move. And don't forget we have to create a window. So create the window and screen. Will look something like this. Now if I run this, let's see. There you go. So I called move and it did what I said, move forward, and then it turned it right 95, which we didn't actually see, and that's okay. So what about the onclick method? What if I only want it to do this if I click down on that shape? Okay. So then in the events, we're going to have to say we want the object to use the method onclick. Now, what do I want to do when it onclicks? Now, what's important here with the onclick event is the onclick method, sorry, I used the word event. The onclick method, it takes only functions as arguments, which again, argument is like your input there. Well, parameter is the better word because we're actually not plugging it in. So you can only put a function in this parameter. You need it. You can't say onclick forward 50. There will be an error there. So what function am I going to put here is I'm going to do the function move. Right? So I want the function move to happen. Now, the idea when you use an onclick method is not only do you have to use the function as a parameter here, but up here, the function, if this is going to be used for the onclick, it needs two parameters, typically x and y, because when you click down, it's getting the mouse position. Whether you're going to use those or not, they are needed. So now notice what's going to happen here. So let's, I don't want it to move right away. I don't want it to move if I click onclick. And then we're going to add here, after I click down, let's also have it say print. You clicked on the circle. Okay. Let's watch this. So stop that game from running. Let's run this. Missing two arguments, x and y. There you go. And I believe that's on line 33. I missed that. All right, here we go. Hopefully this works. X is not defined. Takes function as a parameter, which I knew that. How come it's saying x is not defined? Let's see. Oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to have parameters there. Okay. Sorry, the function is move, so it's going to grab move from there. There you go. Good. All right, so we have our circle. And now if I click here, what should happen is on click, it's going to do this function move, which has to have those two arguments, x and y. The parameters, not really arguments here because we're not inputting it. And then it's going to move forward 195 and it should print you clicked on circle. Good. Click on it again, move forward right 95, it shows, and I can keep clicking it and it will continue to work because this is, running my game. And there you go. So just like that, that's the onclick method. Now, say part of this game is you want to actually keep score, all right? And there's different ways you can do this, and I'll stop there. Now, what's interesting about the score method is with functions and parameters, score, you have to be very careful. Not even score, with variables in general. So say I did in this, and I'm going to get rid of this so I can have a little bit nicer code. So let's say I said score equals 0, and then within move, I actually want it to get score. I want it to add 1 every time to the score and print the score. Now, what's going to happen if I do this? Notice if I run this game, I click down, it says you clicked on circle, I click it again, clicked on circle, and I said, and you might be thinking, dang, Mr. Hine, how come it's not printing a score? You tell it to print a score. And the reason for that is because when you create functions, functions are like in their own context. They don't know anything else that's happening in this code. So what you actually have to do is if you want to use a variable outside of this function, you have to call it within the function by calling it a global variable. So you actually have to say, I want that variable score, and it's global, meaning look outside of this function, look in the globe of this code and grab that function. And now we'll grab that function 0, which will allow it to add 1 and print score. So I'll show you what I mean now. So I run this now, click on it. Now it has score 1. Click on it again, now it prints score 2. Because notice it was able to grab that variable since I was able to use it as global. And there you have it. So the idea there is if you want to use any variable outside of the function, you need to rename it. Well, not rename it. You need to rewrite it in the function as a global variable. So what it does there is that global variable, that global will find that variable outside of your function in the global of your code. So it's looking for code or some variable outside of here, and when it finds it, it'll use that. Okay. So that's a little bit of the onclick command in creating games. What's important as you go through this lesson, as you go through this unit, notice the format of how they create games. What does each block represent? Make sense of the format of how they write codes, because again, I want you to contribute to the coding community, because that's how other people are coding around the world, and you want to be on the same page with them so you can work together. So look at the configuration of how the codes are written, the blocks, and or I guess you're also creating it. And what I might do is actually post the answer key for this first game so you can kind of see what a finished product looks like of this game. And this will be after the due date, of course. But there it is. So that's a little bit about procedures and functions, where we use the define. So define some sort of function, also called a parameter or a procedure. So define a function and give it parameters or inputs. And then if you ever want to call those, you call them arguments. So if you want to use move, then what argument do you want to use, or like input. And then the onclick method, I talked about the onclick method here, where it only takes function as a parameter. So you have to have a function somewhere that it'll take. And then that function also needs, for onclick, needs to take two parameters, typically x and y. You just put those in there, whether you use them or not. All right. And that will work there. All right. It's kind of a lot, but it's the first lesson, chapter 2. So don't worry, it will get easier the more lessons we do. All right. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it helped you a little bit. Know that you can reach out to me. If you have any questions, email me or come to office hours. All right. Good luck on the first lesson and creating your first game. All right. Bye-bye.